I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of the Top 10 of the 2010s. This week, I'm going to be talking about Her, but if you're new to the series, what I do every single week is I look at a different genre every 3 weeks, and I break down my top 10 list of some of my favorite movies of the decade. So we've already done action-adventure, now we're concluding with our romance series. So that means next week, stay tuned for sci-fi fantasy movies. Lots of great franchises, Marvel, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, that happened this decade, which really had a big impact, and then also sort of the smaller one-off sci-fi movies that I think actually saw a resurgence in this decade. So lots of great things to talk about next week, but of course this week I'm going to be breaking down my favorite romantic movie of the decade and one of my favorite movies of all time, which is Her.
We're only here briefly, and while I'm here, I want to allow myself joy.
I've never loved anyone the way I love you.
Me too. Now I know how.
Her is one of my favorite movies of all time, and like any other film lover, you know that when someone asks you, what's your favorite movie of all time, or what are some of your favorite movies of all time, I almost always give a different answer, or can't really say, because it changes all the time. How do you compare something like Jaws to Her when they're sort of so different and work on so many different elements? That's almost impossible to say, but nevertheless, Her is always in that sort of rotation in some of all of my favorite movies of all time, because it's so impossible to pick. But this was actually maybe one of the hardest videos I've ever had to film and to write, because Her is one of those movies that, like a lot of my favorite movies, I actually can't explain. There's always something about it that connects with me on some sort of deep emotional or psychological level, that even though Her is a movie that I've almost been thinking about every single day since I've seen it, there's always sort of a component that I'm missing. For something that feels so personal, in a lot of ways it feels foreign, because I can explain so many different things. I've read so much of the history and listened to everything there is about it, but there's still this extra part that I can't fully explain why I'm more connected to Her than I am, say, to Jaws. For some reason, there's some sort of thing that connects me to it, and that's, a sort of a similar phenomenon. I think that happens with a lot of film lovers, that they'll say Citizen Kane or The Godfather are the greatest movies of all time, but that is often not their favorite movie of all time. Their favorite movie of all time is something else. Something that they just connect to because of a certain taste, and people have different opinions, and certain things connect them based on previous experiences and whatnot, and Her is one of those movies for me where it just resonates so clearly and so impactfully, and clearly has done with millions of other people as well, but for me resonates almost so much that therefore I found a hard time trying to explain why I necessarily love this movie. So the structure of this video, I'm just going to break it down into a couple of different pieces. First, just talking about all the different types of technical elements that I think work really well and sort of as a miracle that come together in this brilliant way to have a great movie. And then, and of course, I'm going to talk about my initial viewing and sort of my feelings and thoughts, and try to sparse through the themes and the emotions that connected with me that maybe will connect with you, and sort of just try to explore it in real time now. So when I first saw the movie, I saw it on my phone. Kind of a fitting way for this kind of subject matter, and the way I recommend it to a lot of people is to watch it by yourself at home, on a laptop or on your phone at night, because there's sort of an instinctive barrier just by the concept of the film, which actually kind of makes this a hard movie to recommend to a lot of people, because they sort of it's hard to get over that hump, but of a man falling in love with his computer. But I think once you do, you brings really an incredible sea of emotion, and at least for me, and if you have even an iota of the impact I had the first time, I think you definitely would connect to it. But really, when I saw the movie for the first time, I was stunned. It was really, I guess I would describe it as an emotional stunnedness, sort of an empty canyon of feelings where you were to look inside, and sometimes it's easy to parse. If I just watched The Invisible Man, that's a movie where you watch and you go, wow, that was really scary, I was really tense, and that's an emotion you can feel. But with Her, and something I've really experienced with only a few films, I was just so almost confused and at a loss for what I was feeling. It was so emotionally impactful that I couldn't process everything at once. Unaware almost also as to how I should feel, because it sort of connected so deeply. I connected to its themes of urban isolation, of being lost, of finding connection, its immersive world building, the impending overconnection to devices and loss of human interactions, but more importantly, to the central humanist theme of love and trying to examine what that is by looking at the non-human, by looking at a relationship that almost deconstructs it by having it to be just a voice, removing that physical aspect. And then, of course, the problems that occur and really try to dissect it in an intellectual way, but also in a really deep, simplistic, emotional way that disconnects on both levels for me. And then just the technical aspects of the movie. The photography by Hoyt van Hoytema gives it almost a hazy in this pastel color and production design. It's an optimistic kind of a future. It's nostalgic, it's comforting, it's warm, it's idealistic. It doesn't resort to the common cold blues of other sci-fis that have a much warmer palette, more apt for this romance. The structure of almost how it mixes narration or just people speaking with different types of images. For me, it's a type of filmmaking that I guess was pioneered by Terrence Malick and then adopted in a lot of my favorite movies. You know, Waves last year has some of those elements. Of course, this movie, Arrival, I think, has some of these great sort of montage sequences that for me are the central element of what film is so great at doing. It's the combination of everything at once. It's the combination of music with the written form and the images all at once in that sort of directed control that only film is able to do as a medium. And I think those moments are what I connect to because they're sort of firing on all cylinders. And these moments of these sort of montage sequences feel like someone talking over your shoulder as you're watching their home movies, or it feels like someone going into sort of a monologue and their eyes drift up and you can see inside their head and sort of the images that are being flashed. And you could do this way to sort of manipulate time the way film does, in terms of looking back at the past and reflection, which a lot of movie is. You know, Theodore getting through his old relationship and sort of being able to process his old relationship through this new one and his world around him. And then the central performance of Joaquin Phoenix, which in my opinion is his best performance, better than, you know, Joker and The Master or Gladiator. I mean, this is really a movie that he carries on his shoulders because he's, for the most part, in many stretches, the only person on screen. Now, that's also another testament to Scarlett Johansson, who plays Samantha, the AI operating system, who isn't even on screen, but just her voice gives so much character and depth, and you really understand her and feel a connection to her without even seeing her. So that's an incredible acting job, of course, with Scarlett Johansson. But then Joaquin does the same thing, but in a different way, that we can see a lot of his facial expressions, and we're always looking at him, so the film is always reliant on him in some extent or another. And then, of course, the great supporting cast. The highlight for me of Amy Adams as Theodore's friend is just sort of this great supportive, earnest, so realistic character. I love Amy Adams. She's one of my favorite actresses, and this is a role I think people forget about because she's maybe not that often in supporting roles nowadays, but she is really just fantastic in this movie. And then when we reach the ending, that sort of final shot is a great desktop wallpaper, FYI, but it also makes me debate the ending of the film, almost what the purpose was, and every time I watch it, I sort of get a different interpretation out of it. Actually, no, this is supposed to happen, or no, this was supposed to happen, and she plays a crucial part in that interpretation because she is, of course, in that last scene with Theodore. The score by Arcade Fire is something that I've fallen asleep to hundreds of times. Its mix of melancholy and hopefulness, the slow, calm pace of times when Theodore is reflecting back on his past, to the sort of more rapid piano work that is played when they're in sort of these sweeping romantic scenes and they're sort of in the moment with on each other. It's sort of a slow pace between them, almost representing Theodore and Samantha and their sort of evolution, both separately and then their evolution within the relationship. I'm not sure if it's themes of loneliness or an optimistic future or just devoting yourself 100% to something or hopeless romantic, the themes that I connect to, but for some reason I connect to it, and I'm always looking for those types of movies, and really every time I sit down to watch a movie, I look for a movie just to keep me emotionally barren, to impact me in such a way that I'm always able to process things, and therefore throughout subsequent days and maybe years, I'm able to process it, and actually using art to not only give me myself an emotional experience, but also process the way I look at the world and how I live my life. And Her does that, and I'm so thankful for the movie, and in a lot of ways it's why I keep going back to watch movies, and why I'm so obsessive about them is because of experiences like this, which are so unique, and something even now after this sort of 15-minute rambly video that I can almost sort of just explain. That's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know some of your favorite romance movies of the decade. Stay tuned, subscribe to the channel so you never miss next week's series, which are going to be sci-fi fantasy. So next week, like the sort of pattern's been going, I'm going to be talking about some honorable mentions, and then my picks from 10 to 7. So it's going to be a nice long video talking about a lot of great sci-fi movies in this decade, which I think was a great decade for sci-fi movies. That's about it, guys. Until next time, stay tuned.